What's going on, everybody? Welcome back to Liam Picks Fights. This is going to be a solo stream going over some tips and trends for the betting action that will be involved at UFC Kansas City this Saturday night. So, very excited to be breaking down some of the action with you guys. Thank you guys for your patience, by the way. Was working on putting together some documents as I was going along here. And this is more so, if you guys have ever seen my content before, you may have seen I did a full card breakdown with Rich earlier today. So we're not going to do that. This is going to be a lot more laid back, a little bit less structured. So we're going to get a lot more interaction with you guys and what you guys would like to talk about from this fight card. But how we're going to kick things off and how we're going to get started is talking about this amazing main event that we're dealing with. So I'm actually going to full screen the content here for a second, and we're going to talk about some of these trends because it's really important on a fight card like this to know what we're dealing with, right? And it's not a fight card that has a ton of high-level fights, but the fights that we do have that are really high-level are featured in the main event and the co-main event especially. Featherweight, very competitive weight class, very high-level stuff. Just look at what we're dealing with here. Max Holloway, guys, extremely impressive. 19-7 UFC record. He's a former champion as well. So truthfully, Max Holloway has put together just an immaculate resume. But one of the trends that I noticed here, and you'll see it, it's listed as takeaway, profitable overs, costly unders. So just looking at Max Holloway, he's a guy that's been going over the posted betting total so frequently throughout his UFC career. But when he was a younger man, when he was a little bit more wild, when he was a little bit more vulnerable as well, he was getting finished in some of those early fights. He was getting a lot more knockouts. But recently, the only guy he's knocked out, basically in recent years is Jose Aldo. It's been quite some time since he was able to get a string of knockouts or finishes. So a lot of his fights are going over. A lot of his fights are going to decision in this spot. And I think that that's something interesting to note coming in here. So just looking at the document I put together, 5 of the last 5 fights, 100% have gone over the posted total. 9 of the last 10 fights have gone over the posted total. And keep in mind, most of these were 5-round fights that these were scheduled for, guys. So we're not dealing with, just 3-round fights. These are a lot of 5-round fights, and most of them are going over the posted betting totals. You'll see here in number 2, right, goes to decision. In 5 of his last 5 fights, he's gone to decision. In 7 of his last 10, he's gone to decision. So you're really seeing that Max Holloway, again, earlier on in his career, 17 out of 30 career fights have gone to decision, 50%, 56.7%. But now in his 10 most recent fights, 70% have gone to decision. So maybe he's not finishing with that same ferocity. Maybe because the level of opponent is increasing, we're not seeing Max Holloway able to get those finishes that he's known for. So something really big that we're, obviously want to keep in account. I think one of the things that people do is they get sucked in sometimes on a week-to-week basis with what we're dealing with from a betting perspective, whereas sometimes you can get a lot more by zooming out a little bit. And maybe with Arnold Allen, who's only had 10 fights and he hasn't been tested as much as somebody like Max Holloway, we have to be a little bit more cautious drawing inferences about, what it all means. But in this case, I think that we could draw some conclusions about Max Holloway. He's got a huge sample size, over 20 fights in the UFC. So I think that is something that we want to take into account. And so what's some of the other data points that I noticed here? We'll bring it back up. To win on the money line as an underdog, Max Holloway's been altogether unexceptional, to tell you the truth, right? He's been good. He's been okay. He's produced a small profit, I believe, if you look at his total sample size. But then, most of the time when he was cashing as an underdog, it was in the plus 130 range, the short underdog range, and he's failed to come through in some of the bigger underdog opportunities against Volkanovski, against Dustin Poirier. So that's kind of the look back at his career. He's been a pretty high average odds underdog. Again, some of that was earlier on in his run, but even recently, Jose Aldo, I think, was the last time he won a fight that he was an underdog coming into fight week. He closed a pick'em with Brian Ortega, believe it or not, when he absolutely dog walked him in that fight. So Max Holloway is a guy who's gone up and down in terms of public perception. The public doesn't really know exactly what to make of this guy, but where does he stand out? Where does he excel as a favorite? Over the course of his UFC career, he's 16-2 overall as a favorite. Over his last 15 fights, he's 13-2. So that's just really mind-boggling stuff. Extremely productive favorite. And you look at the average odds range that I have listed on screen, minus 243 for Max Holloway. Expected win rate for a minus 243 favorite is 70.9%, and he is winning 88.9% of the time. That's just insanity. Way above the win rate over expectation. So I think that we have seen a ton of that says 2.2 on my document. Excuse me. I got to edit that in real time. That should say 22.2, or excuse me. No, that's just wrong altogether. Oh my. There we go. 18%. But either way, right? Just way overperforming. Guys, I literally put this document together as we're going here because I had it all on my pen and pad notes here. So appreciate you guys bearing with me. And we got a lot of really sharp people rocking with us in the chat. So appreciate each and every one of you guys. My guy Rips here in the chat. Do late night spaces with him every so often in the lead up to these fights. So guy that you should be checking out his work as well. Very sharp stuff. Our guy Bo Jackson, a couple of the regulars as well. Illinois Bigfoot, Big Bird. So thank you guys all for being here. Going to continue to break this down really quick, but we'll just move off of Max Holloway by talking quickly about his overall performance against the number, because at the end of the day, this is a numbers game, right? This is a numbers business. And Max Holloway, he's a fan favorite, but sometimes you got to separate your fandom from the numbers, right? And make sure that they line up. If I'm going to bet on somebody, it's got to be, I like you, whatever, I'm a fan of you, but I also think you're going to make me money, right? Because at the end of the day, we're trying to profit here. So trying to profit on Max Holloway, you've been able to do so, right? And the way you've been able to do so is by being consistent, backing him through and through, and mostly by targeting him as a favorite. But does that mean that the train is going to ride forever? No, it does not. So you got to keep that in the back of your mind as well. Overall, he's way outperformed the odds. BetMMA.tips, they have a very useful service where they will take a bunch of data and run it together and see how somebody's done their ROI against the number. I had to crunch these numbers myself, guys, because their data set only goes back to 2013. And this guy, Max Holloway, has been fighting in the UFC for a damn long time. So 4 of his fights are left off the sample size on BetMMA. I had to do that math myself. So this is an approximation. He's about a minus 108 over the course of his huge 25 fight sample size in the UFC. So over that whole course of time, the public perception's gone all up and down, right? He started as a very young man, inexperienced, a little bit wild, a little bit more of a brawler. But he's always been a guy that's capable of going to decision, that can win a decision, that can fight back and forth, that can keep it close. But he's not always been the most lethal finisher. I think one of the things that stands out when you start looking at the Arnold Allen, numbers is that Arnold Allen is finishing at a little bit of a higher rate. So here we'll take it now to page 2 on the document, and we'll start talking here about Arnold Allen. So Arnold Allen, 10-0 in the UFC. I mean, you guys can just go back and look for yourself at the record books. There's not many people starting off their UFC career 10-0. Very, very few, less than 10 fighters. So that's an extremely impressive record to run up for Arnold Allen. Has he done it always against the strongest brand of competition? No. Has he done it always in the most convincing fashion? Arguably not. The TKO via injury against Calvin Kattar is something people are going to wrongly hold against him. Nothing he could do about that. He did his best. He showed up. He did his job. Thought he looked good in round 1, but really can't draw too many long-term conclusions and inferences about that. So for a guy who's 10-0 in the UFC, there's still a lot of questions, let's say. But overall, you just can't ignore that, right? It's hard to rattle off 10 wins in a row if everything goes well, without stubbing your toe, without getting something backwards, without missing a beat somewhere along the way, without showing up sick one night, without, your girlfriend broke up with you, it's just, there's a lot of ways that you could lose a fight in a 10-fight sequence. So to see all the success that he's had off the rip, very impressive stuff. On the other hand, right, this is a step up in competition. So want to be cognizant of both those facts as we come in to this conversation. But now let's bring back up the data. So we've got Arnold Allen, and I'll zoom in just a little bit here as we bring this down. So zoom in so we can see it. Oh, there we go. You guys can see I'm a real tech whiz over here. But what we've got going on, right, is that Arnold Allen, he's not a guy that's going under the posted total, just like a madman or something like that, but more so than Max Holloway, especially over the recent data set, right? We said Max Holloway 5 of 5, 9 of 10, right? That's 90%. That's 100% in the last 5 and in the last 10. But then you look at the last 5 for Arnold Allen, 60% have gone over, right? So 2 of those fights have gone under the posted total. That's the Dan Hooker fight as well as the Calvin Kattar fight. But then you look at his early UFC run as well, submitted Mads Burnell, a talented grappler, a guy that's known for being pretty tough to deal with on the mats. No pun intended there, Mads and mats, but he's a guy who's very tough in terms of the grappling, and he was out-grappled there by Arnold Allen in the final exchange. He was trying to wrestle. He was getting a little careless. He was a little tired, and Arnold Allen was able to put him away. When I look at, the Allen Omer fight, again, a fight where he was not expected to go out there and get the submission finish, and he was able to do so, Arnold Allen. So a guy that's got submission wins in the UFC. He's got knockout wins in the UFC. He's undefeated 6-0 to the decision so far in the UFC. A lot of really impressive stuff in that short tenure, but what did we talk about with Max Holloway? Lengthy data set, huge amount of numbers to work with. It's a lot smaller for Arnold Allen. It's a lot less deep. And it was against a lot of guys that were a little bit older, a little bit longer in the tooth, a little bit, maybe on the back half of their career. Could you say the same about Max Holloway? Potentially. However, you also have to acknowledge he's only 31 years of age, right? He's not past it in terms of physical skills. He was just fighting for world titles. So there's a lot to still love on the Max Holloway side, but Arnold Allen, you just can't sneeze at these numbers. He's done a lot of things right so far in the UFC. How about the goes to decision prop? 3 of his last 5. So the same thing as the overs. However, you see that he had a fight that went over the posted total, yet it did not go to decision. What does that tell you? It tells you, just like Max Holloway, right? Max Holloway's got a big disparity between the amount of fights that have gone over and then the amount that have ended inside the distance. It means both these guys have tended to get their finishes late. I know recently Arnold Allen's gotten these 2 finishes in the first and second round, but then you look back historically and he's gotten the 3rd round finish twice in the UFC. Max Holloway, 3rd round finish, 4th round finish, 5th round finish. That's stuff that he's known for. That's stuff that's classic for him because he's not a huge hitter. He's not a one-shot guy. He's going to break you apart with volume over time. That's what we've seen from Max Holloway. That's the Max Holloway story. So a lot to unpack there. Now, as far as it goes in terms of winning, that's all we've seen from Arnold Allen. Shout out to the iced coffee that we got going here at 1:29 in the morning local time here. And guys, like I said, full card breakdown already posted on the YouTube channel if that's what you're looking for. But right now, we're digging deeper into the numbers, going one fight at a time here and trying to really break it down. So my guy, YBB, very sharp capper in the space. And he says, Arnold Allen Island, I like where your head's at, man. As an underdog, this guy's 3-0. Extremely productive. Look at the average odds, plus 138, producing an insane ROI as well. So if you've been a money line backer for Arnold Allen, if you've been getting to him at the window, especially as an underdog, you've been printing money hand over fist. Max Holloway, he's been phenomenal as a favorite. We said 16-2 overall in the UFC, 13-2 in his last 15 fight sample in the UFC. That's huge. But you're looking at Arnold Allen 3-0 as an underdog, right? 10-0 overall as a betting commodity in the UFC. So huge returns overall on both of these guys. What does that tell you? It tells you don't get too crazy about whatever side you're on here. If you want to go lay the chalk with Max Holloway, no problem. But also be weary that this guy Arnold Allen's nothing to be trifled with. And on the other side, I think that Arnold Allen, he may be worth an underdog shot this weekend, but you don't want to get out over your skis because of the recency bias and say, hey, he's going to do all these things. This is still Max Holloway we're dealing with. He does have an insane amount of volume, an amount of volume that's virtually unmatched in the history of the UFC. But when you're absorbing the amount on the comeback that he's absorbing, that's a huge red flag for me. And so Anna makes a great point in the comment section. Shout out to Anna. Thank you for saying this. Can we talk about how Allen breaks his hands every fight? That is true, but he normally does take the requisite amount of time off in between fights. It's a problem. It's a problem long-term, but is it, enough of a problem that it's going to stop him from potentially winning this fight? I wouldn't say that either. Think about Volkanovski in the last fight. I bet him inside the distance there at plus 333. I thought he might have finished that fight, save for him breaking his hand early on in the fight. So I think that that's something to keep in mind here as well, is that it's not to say that a broken hand would cost you the fight. These guys are tough and they'll fight through it, I think. Arnold Allen breaking both fists is like a medal. Absolutely. And Londo in the chat as well says, I'm playing Allen. He's hungry and he's dangerous. I like where your head's at. Now, on the other side, Android says 5-round favors Max. That's true. Just in the sense of the knowns versus unknowns. On the unknown side, Arnold Allen's never really gone the 5 hard 5s in the UFC. On the known side, Max Holloway can go 5 hard rounds. But where the rubber meets the road is, can Max Holloway continue to do 5-round bangers, taking all this damage? I think eventually that bill is going to come due. Maybe that comes due with Arnold Allen. Maybe he can make it last for a while longer, but he's a lot older than 31 in terms of fight years, I would argue. So that's what makes this a really fascinating matchup. Both these guys are, elite featherweight. So elite featherweight matchup, I think that there could be value on an underdog almost every time out. But again, for the reasons we mentioned, Max Holloway is a very special fighter. So not a guy that I'm looking to anxiously get in front of. Questions that you guys have about this card, about any trends, about any fighters, about any data, please go ahead and fire that off now. I'm going to do a much quicker stream here tonight. And then I'm going to be hitting you guys as well with some shorts content. Going to try and drop 1-minute breakdowns roughly for every fight that's on the card as I get my preview article done tonight as well. So just trying to experiment a little bit with new content on the channel. If there's things that you guys would like to see more of, go ahead and drop that in the comments below, please. Always like to see that. And then anything else that you guys want to see, go ahead and drop that as well. Always happy to try and help you guys out, put you in a position to succeed. Let's address some of the comments in the chat here. Jay says, I don't know. Thought Max did better in Volk 3 than Perception. Wow. Yeah, me and you disagree there, Jay. Allen's best legit win is Yusuf, which was very close. I would tend to agree with you. I think he was looking good against Cater, but admittedly not a very long fight there, not a very long sample. I thought the Yusuf fight was a great look. And I just think overall, Arnold Allen's a guy who's quietly just been stacking wins. The Nick Lentz wins, they're not going to blow your hair back, but they're respectable. Even the Mads Burnell win, it's not aging like fine wine or fine cheese, but, I think it's been aging just fine. It's been a very sobering win. I think that Arnold Allen's fought a decent level of competition throughout. Nobody that was like, oh, this is the guy, this is the huge win. But I just think he's fought the middle class of featherweight and done quite well and gotten a lot of relevant experience. I think it might be the right place at the right time for Arnold Allen. Shout out to Londo says, I could see him switching up the game plan and Allen going for takedowns. He can't point fight against Max. That won't end well for him. He needs to mix in the takedowns and wear Max down. Yeah, and I think go back and watch the Yair fight where Yair was basically turning Max into a wrestler at various points. Max is going for takedowns. He's looking for the double. He's looking to get on top. When have we ever seen that from him? I think he might have been getting touched on the chin and getting a little bit worried, a little bit concerned. And I don't know that he has that same bailout strategy here because I think Arnold Allen's a little more physical. He's a little lower to the ground, a little more stout. And I think that he's got a lot to offer in the grappling. So I think both these guys are sneaky good grapplers. And that's another element that people aren't talking about that I think you got to consider is the submission. Max Holloway, he's not quite been profitable to the submission prop, but for a guy that's only gotten 2 in his career, he's always like plus 1,000, plus 1,500 or whatever to get the sub. So he's only gotten it twice, and he's like -1 unit. If you flat bet it for every fight in his 25 plus UFC fight career. So that's another interesting note here. So we've covered a lot of the data points here on the main event. Shout out to Android, says he likes the over. That's what the data suggests here. And just looking at the odds screen, which I just pulled up here. Here, let me pull this up on Best Fight Odds to see what we're dealing with in terms of the over-under round total here as I take a sip of the iced coffee. Yeah, wow, you're looking at a plus 100 across the board, basically, maybe a plus 105 best available on the under 4.5 rounds prop here. Fight doesn't go to decision is a pick 'em, whether this fight goes over or under, basically, or goes to decision or doesn't go to decision. I think overall, if you bet featherweight fights long term to go to decision and to go over the betting total, you make money. But nothing that'll blow your hair back. Small returns there if you just blind bet into that. This one's tricky, though, because I can actually see both these guys getting a finish. I could see Arnold Allen potentially gassing out, but I also just think that, we might not see as aggressive a style from Max here, especially if he gets caught dinged early. I think that Arnold's going to be pretty aggressive, especially countering in the early going in this fight. So I find it difficult to project this one out, but the data does point to this fight going over. And it does point to, the over and Max Holloway being somewhat correlated results. So if you think Max Holloway is going to win, I would also expect that this fight probably goes over. The thing is, though, the lack of 5-round experience from Arnold Allen creates a real X factor, a real question mark here. And I think that the fact that bookmakers, let's see what they opened it up, because that'll be a little telling as well. The public always feels a little different than the bookmaker, and that'll shape the lines. But let's see what the bookmakers opened up the under 4.5 rounds prop at. I'm trying to pull this up via Best Fight Odds, and if you guys have ever used it, it's just an absolutely useless website. But it also shows movement over time. So, yeah, the fight doesn't go to decision. Actually opened -115 here, and now it's moved to plus 100. So that's a little interesting to me. I would expect that a fight like this would be favored to go to decision, but it's hard to favor what you haven't seen. So shout out to my guy YBB here. He makes a great point. Says, I love the unknowns. Remember when nobody thought Merab could outstrike Piotr? The unknowns are always what make the fight more surprising in a good way. And, I think you make a good point. And it's about getting somebody to think about more than one thing. I think that if Arnold Allen's getting takedowns here, he might be able to outstrike Max Holloway. But if he's not, then it's going to be a lot harder. So it's always just about what you can get your opponent to respect. If they respect your striking, then you can really bring that into bear. But if I can also get you to respect my wrestling, get you to drop the hands, now my striking opens itself up. I think this is a great point as well. WW says, is it just me or did Max look significantly slower in his last fight with Volk? Volk looked 3 times faster than Max, and Arnold has a quick one too. Could be a close fight. Allen has solid leg kicks. Yeah, and you look back at that Yair fight again, like I mentioned. Yair landed hard shots, baseball bat-like strikes to the chin, to the legs, and to the body. And I think that Max Holloway, because of his style, he's always there to be hit. I know that he's got pretty decent defense, but he does get hit with even that masterclass against Calvin Kattar. It's over 100 significant strikes in the comeback. And I think when you're getting hit by a guy like Arnold Allen who hits this hard, it's a little bit hard to stomach. It's a little bit hard to imagine he could just take all those shots and not have a problem. So, yeah, I think that there's a lot to be dealt with there. I think that there is a speed, reckoning. And I also think that that's fight miles adding up. That's a lot of things adding up there overall. So I think that it's a great point, and I'm glad that you brought it up. Any other questions that you guys want to get off your chest? Now would be a great time to do so. We will try and wrap it up here in the short little while coming up. But what I also wanted to bring up here is a guy who's performed really ably against the number over time. And that guy, he is from New York. Billy Quarantillo, ladies and gentlemen. Buffalo, New York in the building. Stand up. Since he came to the Dana White Contender Series, guys, he is 4-1 as a favorite, 2-1 as an underdog, 6-2 overall in the UFC for a 53.46% ROI. Incredible stuff from Billy Quarantillo. The guy has really just overperformed people's expectations. And then you go back and you look at the fights that he lost. He was a popular underdog against Shane Burgos the night that he lost there. And he lost to Gavin Tucker, who, Gavin Tucker, he's really good and he's really skilled. He just doesn't always have the durability to hang. He got knocked out by Dan Ige. He got rocked and hurt really badly by Ricky Glenn, but skill for skill, very talented guy, hard guy to get a hold of and control. Edson Barboza, on the other hand, he's a fun fighter. He's a very talented fighter, and he's a guy who's fought the who's who, the hardest fights, fought everybody, extremely tough guy. But the truth is in the numbers, right? And you got to just look at the numbers and see what they tell you. And the numbers say that as an underdog, he's 3-4 for a negative return on investment in the UFC. Overall, Edson Barboza is 11-10 in his last 21 bouts in the UFC, okay? And that is a minus 9.24% ROI for Edson. Is that going to turn around at 37 years of age? No, I don't think it is. I think it's going to continue to go down over time. I think featherweight is not ideal for him. I think he's been a pretty middling featherweight. Let's just go over the results for Edson Barboza since he dropped down to 145 pounds. Loses a split decision to Dan Ige. Thought he deserved to lose that fight, though it was very close. And I think that it could have went either way, but also he had Dan Ige hurt, let him off the hook. Just some things he didn't like to see there. A lot of energy management. Then he beats Makwan Amirkhani by decision, for fuck's sake. He's like the only guy to not finish Makwan in the last 5 years. Then Shane Burgos gets the win by knockout. That was a scary one. Shane landed a lot of good shots there. Edson ate a lot of damage, but great job. That was a beautiful performance. Stuck it out, ate some damage, dealt some back, and Shane Burgos just takes too many shots to deal with somebody like Edson. So that was a problem. Now you look at Giga Chikadze, gets the knockout win over Edson. I thought that was the fight where he showed some real regression. He looked like he was slowing down. Exactly the fight he wants, stand up only, and he got beat. And he got pressured by a guy who then got exposed really bad by Calvin Kattar in his next fight. Then Bryce Mitchell drops him in the first round, takes him down, audits him. A lot of really bad stuff. Jay says he's coming off a bad knee injury. I mean, he's just had so many fight miles. He's 37. He's been beat up. He's fought the who's who in the division. I think the way fresher fighter here is Billy Quarantillo, and the numbers just bear it out. He's a much better betting commodity so far in their UFC runs. Yeah, this fight is a show out for Billy. He blends in the striking, wrestling, cardio, heart, championship material written all over Billy. I mean, that's very bullish for me, WW, but I will say he's a tough guy. He's a very solid guy. And, for me, it's a tricky call because Anna asked a good question here, right? She says, did you bet Rob Font last week? No, I did not, but I did lay off of Adrian Yanez, who was a popular favorite, because, I thought that Rob Font had enough of the skills that it was hard to trust either guy. I thought that Rob Font, if that fight got extended, he was going to be in trouble. But I thought in the early going, Adrian Yanez was in trouble because he takes too much damage early on. He needs time to get his reads. And Rob Font comes out the gates hot, throwing big shots, throwing jabs in the face. So, I thought Rob Font was going to win the first round. I didn't think he was going to knock his head off. That was beautiful stuff there. But, I think in this fight, Billy Q, he's 34, right? He's no spring chicken, but fight years are everything. Edson Barboza's 37, and he's fought all the toughest guys, and he's on his second weight class, and he's had the crap beaten out of him in his recent bouts. That's the real problem. But, it's all just a different fight, a different matchup. You got to take each one into account, take them all one by one. That's how I feel about it. But guys, any last questions, please drop them right now. We'll close it out at 1:45, right about a half hour here. So we got some good trend data. We got some good information out there on the table. And, I think that this is a great format to work with moving forward. So we'll try and keep it to the main event as our primary objective, but we'll also talk about some co-main event trends and any other trends that come up throughout the course of the week. I'll start, staving them off to the side. But just the last thing I'll leave you guys with is I'm going to pull up my Twitter because I share a lot of really interesting tidbits and trends over the course of the week, guys. If you're not following me already, the most active social media for me is at Liam Picks Fights on Twitter. And I'm sharing a lot of just actionable, important information for these fights. For example, I talked earlier today about a trend for the Nicolau and Royval fight, right? You got two guys that are moving in complete opposite directions in terms of their trend. Nicolau, he has been 6-2 to the over-under total. So he's basically going over every time except for two. And that was one was the last fight that he had, right? That went under the betting total. He got the knockout finish there. How about on the other side, Brandon Royval, 1-5 to the over-under. Every fight is going under, basically, for this guy, except for Rogerio Bontorin, who tested positive, I think, for the juice after that fight and washed out of the UFC. So the under opened plus 160 in this fight. Guess what it is right now? Minus 120. So if you wanted to bet the under, you might have missed the boat, my friends. This flyweight under trend has been bet to hell, and the implied win probability has changed significantly. What's another trend that we talked about on here? The three biggest anthropomorphic advantages on the card. The reach category is 6 inches. It belongs to Daniel Zellhuber over Lando Venata. He'll be lording that 6-inch reach advantage, but the same matching reach advantage is present for Dustin Jacoby, who also has the biggest height advantage on the card of 5 inches. He is standing 6'3" compared to just 5'10" for Azamat Murzakanov. So that will be a light heavyweight matchup with a lot of intrigue. What's the biggest age gap on the card for those of you wondering? Well, that, my friends, would be Rafa Garcia taking on Clay the Carpenter Guida. This is a fight where Clay Guida is coming in at 41 years of age, very advanced age for fighting. Talk about 28 on the comeback for Rafa Garcia. I think he's the younger Mexican Clay Guida in a lot of ways. He's a wrestler. He's a grappler. He comes out and pushes the pace. He's a fun guy. He loves to get in a brawl. He's not afraid to fight anybody. I think Rafa Garcia is a new age Clay Guida, and I think he's going to end up getting the job done in that one. A couple other quick trends to talk about, guys. Chris Gutierrez, one of the very few fighters in the UFC today with a leg kick TKO. Not only does he have one of them, he's got two of them officially. Not only does he have two of them officially, unofficially, if you ask me, he's got three of them because another guy who's fighting on this card, Aaron Phillips, got TKO'd via leg kicks. If you go back and watch, it says retirement on ShareDog, but I'm telling you, I went back and saw the film. He got leg kicked a bunch. He could not answer the call in round 4. That's a leg kick TKO as far as I'm concerned. So this guy's banked 3 of those leg kick TKOs. Do you think he's going to do that against one of the best leg kickers in the division, Pedro Munhoz? That is a great question. That is an open question. Here is a trend that you guys probably have not heard anybody else mention this week. I'm confident in that. Pedro Munhoz has the lowest favorite win percentage of anybody on the card. There are 9 fighters on this fight card that have 10 or more bouts tracked via betmma.tips. That means they're a bout that happened in a major organization. We're talking LFA and up, right? Like organizations that have betting odds. So fighters that have had 10 or more tracked bet fights, right? There's 9 of them on this card. Only one of them has a favorite win percentage of exactly 50%. So in 14 fights tracked in the database, Pedro has had 50% of those fights go to the favorite and 50% go to the underdog. Right now, Pedro Munhoz is, let me check here. Pedro Munhoz, no, he's an underdog. He's a plus 180 underdog right now. So, you know, you guys do the math. If you had bet him at plus 180 every time out, and 50% of the time the favorite wins, you've been making money. So I think that that's something to keep in mind here. Pedro Munhoz, not an easy guy to put away. Not an easy guy, to get one over on. Never been knocked out. I don't think he's ever been submitted either. So he is a really, really tough customer. And, you look at the guys he's beaten in the UFC, they've had a 60% win rate. For Chris Gutierrez, the guys he's beaten in the UFC, they've had a 49% win rate. So for me, this is a clear step up in competition for the Chris Gutierrez side. He's got some interesting skills. He's very dangerous. But I think that the guy who's proven more at this point in their career is Pedro Munhoz. And talking about the trend perspective, right? If you guys have been laying the chalk with Pedro Munhoz, you've been crying your way, out of the bank, right? The guy's at a minus 12.9% ROI as a favorite, just 5-3 at an average odds of minus 213. As a dog, the guy's been 4-4, just like I mentioned, right? The favorite's only winning 50% of the time. He's winning 4 out of 8 fights as an underdog, and the average odds are plus 165, just around the range that we're talking about for this fight, right? So he's typically winning around this odds range. And what has his ROI been? If you just blindly bet him one unit every time out, he's been an underdog, you made 26% ROI back on your money. So he's just been a profitable underdog. He's not a guy that you want to sleep on in this role this weekend. You want to do your due diligence before you fade Pedro Munhoz, because as a dog, he's really delivered. So guys, there you have it. I think we hit on a lot of the great trends here, a lot of the major ones. Clay Guida. This is another great trend. Right off my Twitter page here, guys. Clay Guida has leveraged his cardio, tenacious wrestling, and extended his career to his early 40s. As a favorite, he's 4-1 for a 26% ROI. Beautiful stuff. Everything you want to see. But guys, as an underdog, like he is against Rafa Garcia this weekend, he is 4-8, just a 33% win rate. He's plus 205 against Rafa Garcia this weekend. So potentially he could flip the script there, but that's what it would take, because so far he has just not been producing for you as an underdog. Shout out to Anna here. She does ask a great question. Ion Cutelaba has a better favorite percentage. So let's see here. Well, you have to understand, Ion Cutelaba has been an underdog in a lot of these fights where he's lost. Let me see here. He might not have met the qualification for another reason as well. But let me pull this up. So we've got Ion Cutelaba. Let's talk Ion Cutelaba. Just an absolute disaster. So if you have bet on Ion Cutelaba, every time he was an underdog, he's been 1-5 as a dog. Oh, not good. But he will be a favorite in this fight. He is 4-3 as a favorite, so obviously a lot more productive in the favorite's role. But he's still at a minus 5% ROI as a favorite. So you haven't bet on him as a favorite and made money. You haven't bet on him as a dog and made money. You haven't bet on him anyway and made money. Overall, he's just been a crapshoot for your money. Minus 33% ROI on your funds if you bet on Ion Cutelaba overall in the UFC. But his opponent here, making the drop to 205 pounds, Tanner Boser, has he done you much better? Let's take a look at the raw data. 2-2 as an underdog for Tanner Boser. So, when he's an underdog, he's basically doing what you'd expect him to do. He's half up and half down. But as a favorite, he's 2-2. So he's been not producing for you as a favorite, but now you get a shot to back him as an underdog against a complete fraud who's cost you money all over the place in Ion Cutelaba. I think there's a lot worse bets on the board than our guy Tanner Boser this weekend. Unfortunately, Anna is hoping that Ion gets the job done. Listen, I think he can get the job done, but I talked about this on the show with Rich when I did the full card breakdown. Brain thinking is never something that Ion Cutelaba gets credit for in the octagon because he doesn't do much of it, right? He normally goes out there and just goes ballistic. He is hyper masculine, as I like to say. He goes out there, he yells in your face, he swings big hammers and bombs, and he's got some power. He's a fun fighter, but he is all over the place. He's a wild brawler. He's a gasser of the highest order. He's done a couple of quit jobs. He's run onto big punches. He's just unreliable for the money. But again, this is a very closely lined fight for a reason. I think that Tanner Boser has some value as an underdog, but he's going to get taken down in this fight. So the idea of entering on Tanner Boser round 2 is something that I kind of like the sound of as well. And I think he's funny as hell as well. He's an absolute character. But I think, from a confidence standpoint, I really think that the Ankalaev fights kind of ruined his confidence. Trust a donkey to be a donkey. Trust a lion to be a lion. Trust Ion to be Ion. I couldn't agree more, brother. He's going to trend towards unders. He's going to trend towards idiocy. And one last thing that I'll point out to you guys here, beware of the draw on this fight card. I say that just from a narrative standpoint. There are 4 fighters on this fight card that have had a draw in their recent betting sample size in the UFC. We're talking, of course, about Dustin Jacoby. We're talking about Iwan Cutelaba. They shared a draw together. We're talking about Lando Venata, who's had 2 draws in the UFC. So a lot of draws have taken place between these guys. And then just scroll through the Tapology. So you'll see outside the UFC, these guys have gone to draws. So if one person doesn't get a draw this weekend, I'll be stunned. But I think we're going to see at least one over there in Kansas City. Guys, I'll leave you with this last little nugget because I'm a psycho. I go way too deep on these fights into the murky waters. There was one UFC card before in Kansas City. So cheers to that. And at that UFC card, underdogs went 5-8 against the number. So if you're looking for underdogs this weekend, maybe there's something special brewing in Kansas City because 5 of them came through last time. So should be some great opportunities. Low-level fights present opportunities for underdogs. I would not be surprised if we get some rolling this weekend. Guys, make sure that you drop a comment below this video if you want a specific kind of trend talked about next week. If you want me to address more, trends from specific fights, whatever, want me to circle back around to something on video, all the information that you guys need to contact me, to get at me, to find more information about the work that I do, stuff like that. It's all in the information in the description box below. If you guys could do me a huge favor and be so kind, drop a like on this video if you haven't already. Get subscribed to the channel. I put out some of the best content, in my humble opinion, about fights from a relevant betting standpoint. Try and put you in a position to succeed. Want to see you guys learn, earn, have a great time doing it. That's what I try and put you in a position to do. So I appreciate everybody that rocks with me. I appreciate everybody that shows love and support, everybody that's interacting in the chat, sharpest chat in the game. Say it each and every time, truly feel that way. So thank you guys. I appreciate the support. It means a lot. It's been a blast talking through some of these fights with you. I'm excited to get after it. So stay tuned. I'm going to have a Roto Grinders full card preview coming out tomorrow. And I'm going to have a lot more content coming your way. So get subscribed to the channel. Appreciate when you do. Find me on social media at Liam Picks Fights, and holler at me anywhere. God bless you all. Enjoy those fights. Until next time, let's get some fun and some violence in Kansas City. Take care, everybody.